Good evening. We'd like to welcome everyone this evening on this Wednesday, April the 19th, to the Richmond Planning and Zoning meeting. Clerk, will call the roll.
Commissioner Shue,
Yeah.
Commissioner Miles,
Yes.
Dr. Short,
Here.
Commissioner Estelle,
Here.
Dr. Miller,
Here.
Commissioner Perkins.
Here. You're talking.
Okay, I hope everyone's had a chance to read the minutes on the last meeting on March 15th. I get a motion.
I make a motion we approve the minutes on March 15th, 2023.
Second.
Commissioner Shue,
Yes.
Commissioner Miles,
Yes.
Dr. Short,
Yes.
Commissioner Estelle,
Yes.
Dr. Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins.
Okay, first on the agenda is the final plat approval for Magnolia Point Phase 7B. Someone here?
It's our understanding that the applicant has withdrawn that request at this time.
They
Maybe.
weren't ready.
Maybe on for the next meeting.
Not ready?
Yeah, good.
Next is the preliminary plat approval for Parkview Heights.
And, on that one, I did speak to the engineer on that project, and spoke to the property owner earlier. I spoke to the engineer on the way here. I thought they were going to come and actually just present their concept, and kind of in lieu of a work session, basically, and just say, this is what we're proposing, get your comments, and then come back to the next meeting, have everything completely finalized and request approval. But I don't see them unless they walked in. So they may come in late, or they may have just said, we're not coming. So
Okay.
I guess we'll just move on, save them for the end.
Next on the agenda is the major amendment to the planned unit development known as the Farms at Barnes Mill to change the phasing plan.
I think we do have that. Yeah, come on up if you'd like. You can give us an introduction.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Brad Boaz, landscape architect with CMW Architects and Engineers out of Lexington. And I don't know if we're going to have anything on the screen to show, or I'd be happy to walk through what we're proposing. So yes, I represent the developer here at the Farms at Barnes Mill in the corner of Goggins Lane and Barnes Mill. And what you see, the previous one was our original phasing plan for the entire plan unit development. And what we're asking for and requesting tonight is to make a modification to the phasing of how we will implement the project. We are not modifying the design in any way, and we are just asking to modify the phasing, going from, I believe, 6 phases to 10 phases. And if you go to the next screen, it would be the proposed plan. Phase 1 in the northeast corner is what is currently under construction. That is what's called Cattleman's Loop, is the road that travels along the proposed, or the under construction middle school property. They, as I understand, have accepted a bid, and they are now moving on their project. And so phase 1 of our project would be building the road that fronts the middle school property, as well as a road that parallels Goggins, so that we would have establish our 2 access points onto Goggins. One of the reasons we're asking for a phasing modification is we are still working with the potential commercial developers that would come in where we have phase 2 identified. And because we don't have those established yet or ready to go to construction or be proposed, we'd like to get phase 1 finished to be able to serve the school, and then hopefully be able to begin phase 2 in 2024 as we identify on our schedule. Phase 2, which is similar to the previous phase 2, does make the connection to Barnes Mill. So creating the connection from Barnes Mill to the school property is obviously very important to us, important to the city, as we understand. So that remains in place. And then we also just, again, made some tweaks to the phasing in today's climate, how we anticipate the project coming online. So again, as I stated, no change to the design, just trying to feel through how we're going to implement this as we've gathered more information about the market, how we foresee it developing both on a residential and commercial scale. But the most immediate need is to get the school served, to make sure that by the time they're open, that road is in place, and again, make our connections to Goggins, as well as the utility extensions that are associated with those. So I'll be happy to answer any questions. I know I went over that very fast, but
Okay, so you're gonna have two entries on the Goggins?
yes, sir.
And hopefully you get that one on Barnes Mill,
That would be part of phase 2, yes, sir.
because I think that was one of the important.
That was a big one.
Yeah, and that was part
That
of phase
was-
2 of the previous plan too, so that hadn't changed. That still was phase 2, is phase 2.
So nothing's changed except the phasing.
Correct, yes, sir. Design has not changed. And just as, again, my understanding as we went through this process, anytime we make any change, comes to you guys. So this, at the moment, is all we're requesting. And just want to get your questions.
You know, one thing I've never asked is, and this is not about a joke, if you do a PUD and you decide you just want to do one part of it and then you don't want to do anymore, can you do that?
Normally, yes.
I'm just curious. I mean, I've never.
Normally, yes. But this is a PUD, so a planned unit development. So the difference here is there are some time limits and constraints. And so if let's say if we go back to the old phasing and they don't complete phase 1, if my memory is correct, phase 1, 2 years. They have to complete it within 2 years, and then they have to pull building permits within a year. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I'm 99% sure. So there's some time limits there, but if the phasing's changed, it will allow them to complete that first phase in time, and then they still have, within the 2-year limit, which I think we're many months into that now. So normally, yes, but in this case, no. Now, if they complete the first phase within the 2 years, I've read this a while back and I've just kind of forgotten, you all chime in if my dates are off, but it's 2 years to complete the first phase, and then they have 1 year from that date to essentially have the first building permit approved and start construction on something. Now, and I'm fairly sure that my office has been clear with the applicant and the property owner on all that, and I
Sure.
think and they've worked through this, reviewed it together, and all that stuff. So, in this example, if it's approved, the school property that you see is actually not in the PUD. It's part of phase 1 here just because it cleans it up, but it's not in the PUD. So all you have are the lower, I don't have a laser, I don't think. There's one lot though. Now, there's a retention pond, and another green space, I think, or something, but
Well, that was it's remaining agricultural for the use that we originally intended. So there's about 8 acres of developable space there along
yeah,
that.
there's, yeah, it's listed as water quality, and then you have an ag,
Correct.
and then you have a commercial lot,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
So they'll technically be, the school's not in, so there's 2 lots that front Goggins. So what will have to happen here, if this is approved, they have to complete phase 1 that's in the PUD, and then they'll have to, within the 2-year limit, which is somewhat quickly approaching, and then within that 1 year, they'll have to apply for and be granted a building permit and start construction on one of those 2 lots.
Phase 2.
If they don't do that, then it technically comes back to this board, and you would have the ability to look at potentially changing that zone. Now, you don't have to do that necessarily as far as rezoning, but, so I think this addresses some of the time constraints for the applicants.
And I do believe
Thank you.
we were finally approved as all the signatures in April of last year, so we're right at a year. And within that time, we've got the plans engineered, approved, and they're under construction. And so it's just, in construction world, 2 years goes by in a heartbeat. So we're just trying to get that phase done, get the school served, get these first lots on, and then focus in on as we move west and south. So,
And something that may make a difference for you, I'm not sure if you know off the top of your head, but during the original proposal, and maybe it's listed there and I can't see it, but the phasing had some timelines. Are those timelines still fairly
Well, yeah,
accurate?
it's still within like a 10-year period. Again, we just added more and
Yeah.
again, try to take on more legitimately manageable scopes of work. And again, it's still lots and lots and lots. I mean, it's 430 acres in total. It's huge. I mean, the original first phase, this is probably where we made an error, is actually larger than Richmond Center. So that was never going to get built in 2 years. And that may have just been us being a little too optimistic. So it's now we're getting into the real world. We're building stuff. We're dealing with the market and costs, and we're realizing, let's get this phase one. We can do this. It's under construction, and then we'll continue on. And any other changes, come right back to you guys.
Do you go by phase, so you're gonna go phase one, then phase two, then
Yes, ma'am.
phase three?
That's still our
Okay.
intent.
Do you have I missed all
Oh,
of
you're
this. Do you have walkways and all of that to and from the school? I mean,
Yeah, so if you look on well, you may not have the PUD, but so all our roads, cross-sections all have sidewalks. Some roads have walking paths, bike paths with them. So, yeah, there will be pedestrian facilities throughout the project.
Okay.
And as it comes through, they'll do site plans.
Got any more questions?
Oh, okay.
You got anything else?
Pretty cut and
Oh, you got anything?
Anything else, Philip, on there that you?
No, I guess the only thing I'd just throw out that comes up, where there's such a large scale project, and it had some time proposals, if you will, on when phases would be done, and for example, like 10 years. So what continues to happen is we have another project or another development that's proposed, and the first thing people bring up is, well, you've got this huge development coming. So it would be good tonight, I think, if we had an idea of, and I know you can't predict the future, but I'm just throwing this out there, right, for sake of discussion, that we don't finish phase one and then, because I think that's kind of where you were headed. Are you going to finish phase one, then it's just going to sit there?
Sure.
And once they get through phase one, then there really aren't any time constraints after that. Whereas right now, and we don't want to torpedo what they're doing, I'm not saying that. But it would be nice to have an idea that we're not going to sit here 7 years from now and there's going to be other developments popping up and everybody's still got to say, you've got all this traffic and everything going to come out of this development.
Yeah, Philip, I'm happy to speak on that. And there have been times within the last year, we thought that entire area east of that road going to the school was all going to go. And it's just the way of, trying to market to these big commercial developers. We've had some really, we thought, nice big boxes that were looking at it, and those are still in play. And we're just trying to figure out who's going to actually come to the table and make it work. Because we obviously can't build all this on speculation. So those conversations are actively happening. And of course, I can't predict the future, but my understanding is that as the design team, it is every effort is to be made to get this thing moving as fast as possible.
Yeah, that was my next question when he was talking about the commercial part of it. I guess it all depends on
Yeah, there have
who
been days
wants it
when we
and who wants
thought,
to come in, yeah.
there's been days we thought the whole thing's about to go, like, we're about to build the whole thing. And then those people cool and come back, and that's just the dance you have to do with those national developers when they come in. So I do know that a lot of people are very attracted to this and are excited about it in terms of the national market. And that's just from the conversations that they've included me on. So that's all I can speak on.
And now, since I brought up kind of a hard point, now I think I'll make a good one for you. Well, after the review and working through it with our city planner and their staff and the owner's representative, one thing that we did have in the past, and I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but phase one did have somewhat of a significant number of multifamily units that were in that. Those are gone now, so there's no apartments, there's no residential period. It's going to be a school, basically, and most likely 2 commercial lots there. So we're talking some type of business. Now, phase 2, I believe, even had some more different types of residential included in that, the original.
Correct.
Phase 2 now only has three more commercial, correct?
That's
With a connection over to Barnes Mill. So even phase one and two have no residential, no apartments, nothing like that. That doesn't start till you get back to phase three.
Correct.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say,
Yeah.
'cause it's shown here in phase 3, and
So-
then back through there is where the residential.
So I guess my point is, if they complete phase one and stop for a while, it's not just gonna be apartments. You know, and I believe originally that was a concern people had, that we were just gonna have a bunch of apartments. Now, if they had a bunch of apartments in phase one, they were trying to change the phasing, then I would think something doesn't sound right, but they're not doing that. It's gonna be a school, 2 commercial lots. Phase two will be built. Now, and also, just so you're clear, phase one, if they complete phase one and receive a final plat, they can only sell those lots in phase one. They will not be able to, even if there's a road between phase one and two, and we've talked about this, there will be essentially corner lots, but they're gonna be in phase two. They won't be able to sell those lots until they get a final plat for phase two. So if this all works out, I thought it was 12 phases, but if it's 10 or 12, there'll literally be 10 or 12 final plats coming before you.
That's, I agree. Yes, sir.
I made sense, all
Yes, you
right,
did.
that's good.
First time.
There you go.
Is there more questions?
Your phasing schedule looks very optimistic. You start looking at the phases
It-
and the years and the acreage and all.
You're right, it is, and that's just the attitude of the developer, just, really wanting to, well, one, to show that, the city's agreed with us that this is one possible and that the city wants this to happen. And so when we are taking this material to market, that people see that and see that they're serious about trying to get this thing done.
Okay. Good
That's all I have.
Yeah.
Okay, I make a motion that we approve the major amendment to planned unit development known as the Farms at Barnes Mill to change the phasing schedule.
Second.
Commissioner Shute,
Yes.
Commissioner Miles,
Yes.
Dr. Short,
Yes.
Yes,
Ms. Dell,
Yes.
Dr. Miller.
Yes.
Thank you all.
good, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up will be the final plat amendment for Ash Park subdivision. Mr. Worley.
Chris, when I come-
Yeah.
Don't mind, I have, the proposed amendment is probably in your packet, but I've also brought the small copy of the original final development plan.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So, good evening. For the record, Preston Worley on behalf of the applicant developer. Pleasure to be back before you. It's been a few months since I've had a chance to see you, so great to be here. So what we are talking about is an amendment to the final plat of Ash Park Phase 4. And particularly if, most of that development are the triple townhouses along Judah Bear and Dolly and those areas. But if you'll remember, there were 9 duplex lots in that final development plan as Anna Hume turns a corner down into Judah Bear. And so that's the area that we're talking about, are those duplex lots in there. And what the developer is requesting, currently lot 91 is about a .91 acre green space lot. And then lot 90 and 89 are developable duplex lots. And what they're requesting is to make lot 89, to convert that to about a 1.17 acre green space lot. So it's an additional 0.2 of an acre green space in exchange for making lot 90 and 90 the developable duplex lots. So it's really just switching the orientation of the green space and the developable lots. And in exchange, the way that the road turns there, the development actually gets 0.2 of an acre more green space into the development. So it's kind of an even trade. but just what makes sense better for the development and the developable lots.
These lots, are they on the back end of this, on the?
Right.
Yeah,
Right here. If you go down behind Sable
go down
Life,
behind, yeah, but
go down in there.
yeah, it's in the back end, you come through, is that the road that comes through on the back side?
I think I'm understanding what you're saying, that yes, so that's, Anna Hume used to be
Yeah.
the final road
Yeah,
that dead-ended on the original Ash Park phase, and there was a temporary cul-de-sac put in until the future development came in. And then through the pandemic, you'll remember all the Zoom meetings, we had to bring in the Tate Farm and connect the rest of what Turnberry Partners already owned there, and then create Ash Park Phase 4 to run through there. And so part of that was already owned property that just wasn't ready to be phased in, and then part of it was new property that came in. But that's where Annie Hume initially dead-ended into that temporary cul-de-sac.
How many bedrooms are these going to be?
Excuse me?
How many bedrooms are they going to be in these condominiums?
I don't know. These would be duplexes,
Or
not
duplexes.
condominiums. So these would be similar to the duplexes that are already along Anna Hume. And I
Well, we've
don't,
had confusion about two-bedroom and three-bedrooms, so which ones, what's it going to be? Two-bedroom, three-bedroom?
Well, if it's, I guess kind of what he's mentioning is, currently you have the vinyl siding, triplex, if we'll call it that. What he's saying, these lots, this is more of really the entrance into phase 4.
in phase 4.
You come down all the brick duplexes that are on that side,
Okay.
then you transition right at this curve into the triplexes. These lots will now be this side right before you hit that curve. We got some pictures of them, I think, that clarify that. Because this was one of our questions in our meetings we had, are these buildings gonna match the duplexes? Or
the,
gonna match
these are duplex lots. And so if you'll look at the notes, there were, in this Phase 4A, there were 69 of the triplex lots approved, 9 duplex lots. These are all duplex lots that we're talking about that were approved. So all the discussion we had then later on about the triplexes and whether they were supposed to be 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, that won't apply to these at all. These are duplex lots. Those 3 townhouse structures are not going to be built here. That's not what we're talking about.
We're all clear about the parking and that kind of stuff, so it's not going to be any problem there.
That's correct. This is going to be like how Anna Hume was developed as Phase 1 transitioned into Phase 4 there, those duplexes all along there. Those would be, that's the same thing that's being proposed here. This is not the new product that we tried to bring in with Judah Bear and all that with the triplexes. Entirely different.
Okay.
I drive this area a lot because I live back behind Hyundai and Honda. And it's where they cut through and it's almost like you're coming in and it really makes sense because I drive it a lot and I say, what's going to transition? And it makes sense because you really don't get to the triplexes until you get right here at the end of, at the Anna Hume. And it really makes sense to tie the duplexes in, from an aesthetic standpoint, to continue the duplexes until you get to the triplexes. I drive it a lot, and I've been wondering what are they going to do with these? And you probably got to put a little landfill in there to even it out.
Yeah.
You really do. It makes sense to continue the duplexes in this situation to get to, before you get to the triplexes. It's what it really does.
And I think, I appreciate that. That's a good point, because what this will also do, kind of aesthetically and practically, it goes ahead and continues the road out with duplexes, then green space that then breaks before you get to the triplexes. Whereas designed currently, your green space breaks up, then you have 2 more duplex lots that connect into the triplex. So what this will do is finish out the duplex, then green space, then start the triplex on that corner of Judah Bear and Anna Hume. That lot 88 is your first triplex lot.
So, in a sense, you got all your duplexes right there together.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
One here and then one right over on the corner. Phil,
So what we did, sent out somebody today to take some actual pictures of what's out there, because one thing said, this is listed as green space, and there are some slope requirements and some things, so it is, I just want to put that out there so everybody knows that. They can still approve the swap and all that, and I think we're fine. But that was missed. But what I want to do is just show the picture so you know where it's at and know what we call green space and what the lots are. We'll look at if there's a light pole in the way or something.
Sure.
So, if I'm correct, this curve goes to the left. Everybody see that? So, that, that is the new green space, right? The proposed green space?
If you'll orient me from where the picture was taken, Philip, if you don't
We're
mind.
looking, we have our back to phase 4 essentially.
So
And that curve goes to the left and all the new places
you're on Anna Hume with your back to Judah Bear,
Yes.
looking up, okay, thank you. Yeah, that's right.
So this, the building material is drastically gone, obviously. There, so for example, that's it, that light pole, like, looks like, but it'll be, so that would be the new green space. And then let's see what the next picture is. All right, so what he's trying to get there is the slope. So that falls off to that degree. So that's more of the new green space proposed. Go ahead. So that's same thing. Go ahead. All right, so now that's looking back. The curve, the duplexes are behind you, that's looking at the green space, and Judah Bear's up there. And that black erosion control, that's covering an inlet right there. So basically, that's your green space. Sort of gives it a bad representation, it won't look like it'll be green and grass, it won't look like property. Go to the next picture.
Appears to drop off pretty sharp at the back, doesn't it?
It does.
Drops off pretty sharp off the back of that.
It does.
And that's why I just wanted to point that out. So like, see those other lots over there, you got a little bit of flat spot and then they drop off. May not be as much flat, but it does, I think it's somewhat flat and then drops off. Go ahead and go to the next one. Those are the duplex lots, basically. And I think it's standing on the drain.
That's what's being proposed to continue on
Yeah.
towards us here.
So what you can see, that's the current green space, all right, and then a little bit to the right. So I think probably what's happened, some of these are a lot, obviously a lot more buildable. And the other two are duplexes lot, he moves them around, Mr. Chu was talking about. They're not, it's not designated to be like a dog park or anything like that, it's just gonna literally be green space. And there'll be a sidewalk. So even though they flip it, and I think you'll agree with this, the sidewalk will connect up there with the other duplexes, it'll come down in front of these duplexes, it'll go across that, all along the street, all the way through the green space, all the way to Judah Bear. Or at least to that property line on this side, so. See if there's one more. And that's looking back at the duplex lots. Okay, there's the light pole and the drain to the right of the light pole. So all in front of the applicant, I just want to make sure that the way the lots, the proposed lots, you see how it encompasses that radius? I think the requirement's 6 feet for driveway, not supposed to be within 6 feet of that.
That would be right. I think that's right.
So
I take your word on that,
I just
yeah.
want to make sure we don't end up where we approve it, and then we get to, if this happens, where we end up with a driveway, and then we have to try to change that inlet to a grade and all kinds of things, big driveway. We had that happen in phase 4 because there were so many driveways, it was really not possible, I think, everybody laid out correctly, where it couldn't have that.
And that's something we'll certainly have to make sure we work out. I think along that proposed lot 90, that's kind of partially in the turn there, I can't tell exactly how long that is, but the proposed lot 91 is 77 and 1/3 feet. So you can tell there should be ample room there in that turn, which is a little bit longer, to make sure that driveway doesn't interfere with anything in that
And if it's
turn.
a duplex, then I think that's where it's at. It's just, it's a matter of, you know, how important is that area being green space compared to the other area to you, really?
Right. Are we looking at the back of the duplexes?
That is the back of the triplex, I believe.
Are there are there no back doors to these buildings? Is it just a front door?
Well, so again, two different structures that we're talking about. Those, some of them, I can't remember where we landed on it, Philip. Some of them had back doors, some of them didn't.
Those you see right there have back doors.
Yeah,
Not all of them have back doors, they're supposed to have.
Is that even legal? Oh,
yeah.
so if they
There-
don't have a back on
There
the
were two
side-
egress points for all of them. It's just a matter, some of them were on the side and some of them were in the back. But again, and just because of what a joy I had with you all and all of that venture.
I wasn't here, you can't blame me.
I would rather talk about the duplexes that we are talking, so it's a different structure.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what most of Phase 4 was built out, but these duplexes are the lots that we're talking about here.
And one more question. The green space that you're talking about, it's just, you all, do you take care of it? Do you mow it? Do
It's
you-
mowed. Yeah, well, and you can tell right now, some of it's still in development phase, but all of the
Yeah.
green space out there is mowed.
It will be mowed.
Yes.
And if I can throw this out, maybe help clarify it, there's already the 2 duplex lots approved, okay, so, and they're really, so I wouldn't concern myself much with, you know, what the other buildings look like or not, because they can technically build on these lots already. They're just asking, well, they're saying we're gonna build them here, but we'd really like to build them over here and move it because we think it aligns better with the other duplexes and, I don't know, fits in the curve better and lays better. The question you really have before you tonight is, does it make a difference to you where that green space is at, or if it's a little more sloped on the other side or a lot more sloped? I don't know. And as I said, there's a 3-to-1 slope requirement on green space, and I think we didn't get the contours, but it's close to that or maybe a little greater than that, the new one. I personally don't have a concern with it, I think if that green space is on this side, quite frankly, people might walk a dog there that live in that right in that area. And as I said, there'll be sidewalk regardless. Other than that, I think it's just gonna be, because there's no amenities proposed there. So I'm not sure it makes a difference.
And I think Mr. Williams is right in what he brings up for discussion points. I think the way the new proposal will be a little more sloped than the current proposal, but that's also part of the reason that the applicant is wanting to switch, because it makes the lots more developable, and it makes the streetscape look better. And so, yes, it will be more sloped, but none of this green space is designed to be programmed green space now. There's no walking trail, there's no gazebo. It is literally just green space that's meant for environmental purposes, aesthetic purposes. So I think he puts it right. It's a matter of, if it matters to you whether it's sloped or not, we can have that discussion, but it really is, either way, it's just gonna be grass.
I think on that one, when you come around through there, it's really sloped bad. I mean, it's nothing that they could do with it. It's just, no building on it, I know that, but it's, just be green space right there for that. Any more questions?
In our green space, we don't require any kind of gazebo, trails.
Well, there are
I thought we
requirements
did.
in the recreation manual that we have, and we've been discussing that internally, and maybe Mr. Worley remembers. There are requirements. Now, I don't think any amenities were discussed or included in any of their proposals. Now, I'm not saying that necessarily makes it to where that they still don't have, they don't have to comply with the recreation manual. I'm not sure if there's a plan to put something out
So
somewhere.
So Ash Park, the entire development, this is phase 4. Ash Park does have a walking trail in part of its green space. In this phase that we started in late 20 and then finished out late 21 and with all the approvals, there's no programmed or recreation green space here, but there is significantly more green space generally in here than is required by the ordinance. I mean, at the end of, I guess Dolly up here, you've got 140, or, 3.2 acres, 140 square foot of green space up there. So there's a lot of green space in the development, but this particular phase, we never discussed any sort of programmed or recreated green space.
Any more questions? Anyone like to make a motion?
Oh, I make a motion, we accept this.
I'll second.
It makes sense. I drive it all the time. Cut through my house, Karen.
I'll second the motion.
Commissioner Shu,
Yes.
Commissioner Miles.
Yes.
Dr. Short.
Yes.
Commissioner Estelle.
Yes.
Dr. Miller.
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Great to see you.
Next on the agenda is regulation related to digital signatures.
So, she'll pull it up there for you. Hopefully you've had time to review it, but what this is basically just another section and text amendment. I'm sorry? You don't have anything? You all have it in your packet?
Yes, we did.
Okay, that's good. That's the main thing they've got. I'm sure they all read it. So, what this is I think I've mentioned it to you all before, and we may have done some since you all have all been on here. I believe we did the mailboxes, I think, the mailbox clusters. This is another example. This is actually a new section to the development ordinance, or the land code that we now call it, that regulates all the development, and actually some existing land and things. But what this section pertains to is now that digital signatures are accepted by the state, and there are programs out there, for example, like DocuSign is what we use. This allows us to obtain signatures, for example, on plats and various documents digitally. So instead of the old days, somebody'd have to take a plat, if you all are familiar with, like, I thought maybe that one had it on it. But it'll have signature lines, and they'd have to literally drive to KU and get somebody to sign it, drive to Richmond Utilities, come to our office, Well, now we can do that all through email. And what this does is it identifies the procedure for that and who can obtain the digital signatures and how they'll be obtained and what's required in order to do that. There's no fee associated with it, but what it does do is, what we ran into once we started doing this is we had some local surveyors, engineers try to obtain the digital signatures. Well, when that happened, people didn't know, they thought we were approving it, and so they would look at something and say, utilities would say, oh, okay, well, they're good with it, now this all meets my requirements, I'm good. One thing it does, we are the only ones that can send it. So we have to send out, so when it comes from us, they know it's legitimate, and it's, that we're in the process of approving all of it. So it just basically outlines the requirements for that. And as the other text amendments and sections come before you, just like in the past, if approved here tonight, it will go to the city commission for 2 readings. That's it. Any questions? It really has, only thing I will say outside of the actual text on it, it's really made things a lot easier and faster to obtain, and I think it's been fairly popular with everybody. And so, good example, while I'm rattling, Ash Park Phase 4 had all those lots, and then they would end up they would start as one lot, be built out, and then they would be divided into 3 lots. We've used DocuSign for that entire development. So we basically know what's there, and there's different signatures that went on it, but you could basically open up an email, review it real quick, because they were fairly standard, and approve them. So it worked out really well out there. So that's it.
No questions on it? Director's report.
We need a,
I'll make,
yeah, if we have a motion.
make
to
a
put
motion
on-
that we accept the,
Oh,
new,
sorry.
yeah, the new regulations related
that's
to
all right.
districts.
Make, get a motion on that, please.
Yeah,
Do you make a motion?
yes, I did.
Mr. Short made a motion.
I'll second that.
Commissioner Shu,
Yes.
Commissioner Miles,
Yes.
Dr. Short,
Yes.
Commissioner Estelle,
Yes.
Dr.
Yes.
Miller.
Next will be the director's report.
All right, so, one thing, just so you have I'll clarify the agenda we had a little bit. As you know, not the last meeting, but the one before, when we talked about making sure that the projects, the proposals are ready before you bring them before, that's basically why number 4 and number 5, what we did is they submitted before the deadline, which is a week before, so now they submitted, but then they didn't have everything ready, so what we did to try to be flexible is say, okay, since you submitted in time and paid the fees, you now have, and so between that time, now we'd already made some comments, but we gave them some extra time if they needed to obtain signatures or tweak something on the final plat or something like that. And we literally gave them until noon today. All right, but now that meant they had to be re-inspected and passed and all that, and that also involved the schedule of the inspectors. But they didn't have everything they needed, so for example, I don't believe, number 4 there had blacktop down. And I wasn't gonna do that again, right? Because I got in trouble last time, so I'm not gonna do that again. So, and it went well, and they understood, and they pulled it, and they were gonna complete everything, come back next month, number 5. We're still working on some other signatures and encroachment permit and things, so they decided they'll come back and just present it all at one time when they're 100% ready. So we are headed down that path, so we're sticking with the 1 week, submittal. And then, so we can get the information to you, and if they have a few things working, we're still trying not to completely just hard line Wednesday at 4:30, it's a cutoff if they just need something minor, because it is tough in a month. A month can be a long time if you've got equipment and people or lots ready to sell, stuff like that, so. Other than that, we're gonna continue to bring, sections and amendments to the land code, and I know we've talked about this for months and months, and we do continue to meet on it weekly. We have went through a lot of the administrative section, which it's a while back I had that entire section regarding administration as far as basically the administration of the planning and zoning ordinances and what the role of the planning commission is, and then state law governs a lot of that. But I did have a law firm out of Northern Kentucky work on that and review it and ensure that we were in legal compliance. So that's coming. I think we'll bring administration fairly soon, and then we're going to start talking about the zoning, and I think we've got some good options there. Not necessarily reinventing the wheel, but cleaning it up a little bit where that it's not, it makes a little bit more sense, I think. And then we've got a sign ordinance that we have to bring in, but it really hinges on the zoning, so we've got to tie that up. Signs are always wonderful, but I think this will work out. And I believe the parking that we approved months and months ago has been fairly positive. So that stuff's coming, and then obviously any projects that come along and zone changes and all that. As long as I can hear you.
Okay. You were talking about guidelines for green space.
Uh-huh.
Do we have nothing to do with that?
No, you have to do with that.
Oh.
Yeah.
So this is we have a landscaping and recreation manual that's really, it's really a separate manual from the land code, but it's like an appendix right now to that. And we're trying to merge some of that stuff, but we do have specific regulations on required landscaping and things like that, types of trees you can have, can't have, where fencing, all kinds of stuff. But there's also requirements, for example, on green space, like Dr. Miller mentioned, if you're supposed to have certain amenities. And then also it gets into the slope of the green space. So what we don't want is somebody to come in on a project and say, yeah, I meet your green space requirements, but oh, by the way, none of it's usable because it falls straight over a hillside. Now, this one was a little bit different because there's so much other green space, I think. The other big one that's popular is, dog parks, things that we don't require dog parks, but if they do them, we have some things we try to push them towards. We need to clean some of that up, but yes, so
Okay,
that you
well,
would,
I'm glad to hear that.
yeah. And sometimes, since we're on the green space and amenities, sometimes if we're not careful, there's a way to do it and it works, like walking trails and things, if they're maintained, and that's kind of tough to keep maintained, but at the same time, I do think we should be mindful on like gazebos and things, because sometimes you have a gazebo out and it literally looks like it's in somebody's backyard and nobody even knows who it belongs to, and then 10 years from now, it's falling apart and everything else, and nobody wants to maintain it, and we gotta take it out. So, what happened in another phase of Ash Park's a good example. They had the walking trail and they did some changes and we ended up with 2 gazebos, right? If y'all remember this over here. Well, some of those people look out their back door and it's in the green space, but it's right behind their backyard. So technically, if somebody 15 houses down wanted to have a birthday party in that gazebo, they would go to that gazebo and have a birthday party, right there. But most likely, the people who live 15 houses down think that gazebo belongs to that house anyway, would be my guess. And I don't know what that gazebo will look like 15 years from now. And we have some other gazebos in another development I can think of, but I don't want to get in that. So there's things we need to look at and do that I think are nice, and we need amenities, walkability, and all that. But I do think we need to take maintenance in the future in mind and things, so.
They've got one out there in Magnolia Point. It's about to look from here down there to CVS, but it's way down there.
And what's that?
Gazebo. They got one in Magnolia Point out there, and I mean, it's a good distance down there.
I don't know if I'm familiar with one in Magnolia. They have I know they have a nice walking trail
Well,
and
it's
a
right,
nice dog park.
it's right down that walking trail. When you go in and make a left-hand turn, after you get in there and you go down there, you look, it's right between those houses right there. And it's way down in there.
Yeah. They have a walking trail, I know, that goes down and around a detention area and some things.
Well, it's right in that area.
Yeah.
It's way down in there. I don't know, from far off, it don't like it's very well been maintained very much. I don't know that, but.
Yeah, where you run into the issue is if it's a neighborhood that establishes their homeowners association and everybody pays dues and they maintain the neighborhood, gazebos and things like that are taken care of. But if it's a neighborhood where that they don't end up forming that, or if they sort of form it and 10 people are involved and the other 50 aren't, then it falls on those 10 people, and then it usually doesn't go well, and then they're calling the city, won't know why we're not taking care of their gazebo, and it can be really challenging, so.
I don't know if you got a homeowner.
I'm sorry?
I said it could be, really.
Yeah, and the other thing, and I have told developers this in the past, because this has happened, seemed like quite a bit, but I think it's corrected now. It's like, don't come in and say you're gonna do all this stuff, and then once you get approved and it's time to do it, spend the next month trying to get out of it. Just say you're not gonna do it at the beginning or whatever. Let's look at it and see it at the beginning and approve it that way.
It's almost like you need an escrow fund for the developers to maintain their green
Yeah,
space.
and we do, as far as long-term maintain, we don't do that, but what we do have is we use a letter of credit or bond on a final plat that they have to put a bond up, for example, or a letter of credit when they receive their final plat to ensure that let's say they propose a walking trail, that it's put in. I'm more of a fan of having most of that stuff put in and not having to do big bonds and things. Just go ahead and do it and get it over with, and then when it's approved, we're done. But anyway, we can, if you would like to look at some things related to recreation and stuff later, we can do that and talk about what we're requiring and what makes sense. And the other thing that, and not to hold us up, I apologize, but one thing about like sidewalking trails and things, and they can be nice and if, especially if it's through, you know, there's some wooded areas or something like that. But the other thing that is required, and they do, are sidewalks. So, you know, you have the ability to walk from the far end of Ash Park Phase 4 where it connects to Hidden Hills. Well, there's some not there yet, but you can walk from there all the way over to 4 Mile if you wanted to walk that far, and all the way on sidewalk. So there is a lot of connectivity out there and walkability and things, so,
That's good.
yeah, it is. That's the way it should be.
Other business?
I have a couple of things. Anybody else? I have a thing, I just want to kind of close it out on the zoning on Lancaster Avenue. I think that was before you all got in on it. We tried to rezone some of it from R3 to R1, and they were going to do it free of charge. And Mr. Fraser's already went to some of the people that didn't respond, and apparently they do not want to rezone, okay? So at this point, the zoning thing is null and void, I think, isn't it?
As of yesterday, one that was on the fence says he does want to do the rezone. So
Okay.
we may have one more. The other 4 that were on the list said no.
Yeah, so we'll do one more, and then that should be it on that. Because we really wanted to get them all from R3, which is apartments, to R1, if we could. And that would be good. So I think they've done a nice job on that. One thing I did want to ask is the continuing education. Has anybody scheduled some of the things for the new people?
Tyler Stone would know that answer, and I thought we talked about it once, but I don't know the
We did.
dates. I don't know the
But
dates
I always think
on
it's
it.
good to give them a break, and let them go to one of the programs and kind of get a feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they pay for it too, so.
I'm certain
It's
we
really
have it.
nice.
I'm certain we have it on the radar for sure, as far as the when they are. I thought we talked about it. For some reason, I
We did, but it's never,
We never.
in the
said-
first 3 or 4 months, I think everybody should go.
yeah. Well, the only issue with it is just when they offer it.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing, because it's a House Bill 55, if I'm not mistaken, training, and it's, the Kentucky League of Cities usually coordinates it for everybody, and then they have some specialized folks come in and,
Where's it at?
well, that's the thing.
It varies.
Varies.
Yeah.
It does.
And where they have
Really
the whole
does.
state, some of them be way out west, but then they'll do one on the east side of the state as well. So one, was the last one we went to in Berea?
Last one was in
Yeah, I
Berea
went
and
to
one in
Northern
Lexington
Kentucky.
before that one.
And you went to Northern, is that right? Yeah, so some of that depends, and we have the ability, if anybody, I don't think anybody's ever taken advantage of it, but, to help you get there and things like that. I think,
Airfare and all
if I'm not
that.
mistaken, I think we paid it as a meeting, right? I think, so you were paid like a normal meeting.
And we're supposed to do that, every 3 years, I think, isn't it?
But yes, new members are supposed to do it. And it actually is good
All members should
information.
do it every 3 years.
Right, but,
So I
Yes.
just kind of let you know, it's kind of,
Some people need it more than others.
we won't go into that. And the other thing was, I've never heard anybody's talk about projects that had problems that we've approved. And I know there are some that probably you're having trouble getting the second coat of asphalt or this or that. Are we having trouble with some?
not off the top of my head as far as asphalt. Now, because really the way it works is, and that's why, like, even the ones where we did contingent upon really staff approval, for example, when that final plat comes in, if we did a contingency, then we have to approve it. So we make sure everything's at least meets that minimum construction standard. Then we have the letter of credit sitting out there. And if we bring them in, for example, I believe when, say, item number 4 comes back, that development, everything is done, or at least meets the minimum construction standards, they don't have the ability to sell a lot until that final plat is approved. So they usually do what we ask them to do.
Unless the economy is bad.
Yeah.
And I came in one time when the economy was bad, and what to do is the builders will drop them. Just walk away. And what'll happen is the people that are there, they won't have their road asphalt, they won't have this, they won't have that. And then that's why they've got the line of credit and the bond. Then the city can do that. The city doesn't like to be a quote builder, but they may have to sometimes.
Yeah, and I apologize, I think I know what you're referencing now. One thing we have done recently, we have projects that have been sitting out there for decades. Now, some of that was when the downturn of the economy and all that, but the other part of that is there's specific timelines on those letters of credit. So I believe, for example, the first timeline after that final plat, you have 2 years to complete everything. And if you don't, you can come back in within 90 days, I think, from that deadline, before that deadline's up, and request a 1-year extension. All right? But that's 3 years. We have developments that literally had outstanding letters of credit for 15 years. Now, what we have done recently, it's not been popular, but it is what it is. We have identified those developments. We've created the punch list, which is a list of here's your deficiencies. We've sent that along with the letter saying, basically you're on notice. You've got 30 days, contact our office, tell us what the plan is, start the project, complete it, or we're gonna pull that letter of credit. And we did get contacted back, I believe, by all the ones we've sent out so far. We are, for lack of a better term, pulling a bond on one now. Now, part of that is the developer's deceased, but that seems to be moving forward. And the other ones, I believe that we have a plan on one that's out Golden Leaf area, well, the other one's out that area too. So, actually, yes, we have had that issue, and we're addressing it that way, because we still have those letters of credit. And what Dr. Miller's referenced as well, the issue you have is and this is why I like bonds.
If the insurance company will pay.
Yeah, if their
And
performance.
after
yeah.
2008, there were some insurance companies that almost went broke, and they would not pay.
But one thing that was said in our last House Bill 55 training, and also bonds are a surety instrument, and if you do them correctly, they work. But one thing they said in House Bill 55 training is do not do letters of credit, because you do not want because the bank is taking collateral. All right, well, we don't see what that collateral is. So basically, he says, when you do letters of credit, as the city, you're saying, okay, this guy's vehicles and his house and his farm out in, who knows, his land in Florida is standing good for your development. And that's not what you want. Now, one thing that we did here to combat that somewhat, it's an irrevocable letter of credit. So the letter of credit we have, I think, is the best case scenario for letters of credit, but bonds are something I do plan on talking about, and it's still somewhat mentioned, but in the future. Point being, we had those sureties, either a letter of credit or a performance bond, that are standing good to ensure they finish those developments. If they don't, normally a bonding agency will complete the project. Now, what we've ran into with the banks, they're a lot like the city. They're not developers. It's even worse for us, because if we start trying to do big projects, we have bidding and all kinds of things we have to do. But they're not developers, so a lot of these banks, especially if they have the collateral, they just say, well, if it's 200, here's 200. Here's 200,000, go finish it. And then we've done that, as far as blacktop and things. So it's kind of I guess, pros and cons to each one. Right now, we're trying to work with the one surety that I was talking about, that's actually a bond for them to finish it. To just, here's the checklist, go finish it. If that doesn't happen, then we'll have to step in and pay. It needs a final coat of pavement, for example, I know that. The other thing is, the longer they sit, like if you have a 15-year-old project with a 15-year-old letter of credit that's irrevocable, or a bond even, now the bonds can be written a little bit different, but if it's letter of credit and it's only for 200,000 and it was for the final base coat of blacktop, well, in 15 years, especially with the inflation that we've had over the last few years, it's not going to even cover it. So that's why we really need to try to stick in that with the time frames, or at least close to it. Definitely not let them get out 10, 15 years.
I got a question, Philip. If we approve something and it goes back to city commission on the final approval, do they see the concept of what we've done or the development that's gonna be done?
Yes. If, what they, if it's a concept related, if we're talking about, when they would see that would be an annexation, for example, if you all were, if the intent to annex was approved by them and it came to you and say nobody had presented anything other than the boundary survey that's required, and then you all said, okay, it's annexation, show us what you propose to do and all that, and that was part of your decision, then yes, that would be included when it goes back to the city commission.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm getting at. We had this development that was done on Hampton Way. And my feeling of it, those guys done everything that we asked them to do for that. And I think it set a bad preference for people that wants to come in here and build. When they've been over backwards and done everything that they'd asked us to do, and then they get turned down. And I'm just wondering if the commissioners really knew the whole details of that, because that was one of the best laid out. I mean, they asked everything, you know, they moved everything out for us, they put everything in, and then to get turned down that way. I mean, I don't know what they were looking at, or what they heard, or what, but it's,
I don't think sometimes they have all the feedback from us,
well.
what we
I
went
mean,
through and stuff like that.
But, I mean, instead of them, if they doing that, it's wrong. Because I feel like they should come to us and ask us the reason, you know, everything, how we come to that decision. And just tell them, look, it'd be no difference than, Short on, Tate Street down there. When we come, he wanted to put apartments in there, and we asked him about putting houses. You know, I just feel like that a developer, when they come and they do what we ask them to do things, and then when it comes around, you know, for them to get turned down like that, I don't know what they're looking at, what the commission's looking at.
Well, the question is, should we, one of us rotate maybe? And when there's a project that's important, that we really spend a lot of time on, like the one in Hampton Way, that one of the members would go and maybe talk to the board about it, commission about it. Just say, this is what we've done, and this is where we're at, and why we did such and such, and why it's a good idea to approve this, you know. How does everybody feel about that? Would they care to rotate and do that, or what? Because I think it was real important on Hampton Way because of the fact that when they didn't approve that, that's an R2, so therefore he can build everything that's included in R2, and he doesn't have to do any of the things that we wanted. So,
The other thing is, we don't know why they turned it down.
Well, I mean,
that's true.
my point, I guess, what I'm getting at, when you don't have that much objection to it while we meeting, we met about 3 times on that, wasn't
Oh,
it?
multiple, yeah, maybe 4.
We had people that was here that questioned what was going on, but I mean, there wasn't no big uproar about it, you know, really objecting to it, because even they said, well, yeah, we like this or like that. That's the only thing I
See,
don't,
that's why it was a real
don't
problem.
understand about it. And then when the commissioners, you know, when they say no to it, unanimous no. But I'm just asking a question about that. I just want, I don't know where they getting their information from.
Tyler, what do you think?
Well, as far as the information they get, they're provided with everything that is provided to this board. So any concepts or any documents, and they do receive the minutes, and the videos are, of course, available whether they watch the meetings or not. As far as that is what they can go off of, and they can only base it on the actual record. So it does get complicated if we're talking about sending a board member to actually introduce evidence. All the member could talk about is what is in the record currently. So it's somewhat of a little bit of a complicated procedural issue.
So it would be difficult.
No, but that was what I just, I don't understand it. I mean, it wasn't no big objections over it, you know. And I don't know where they get, what information they got or where they got it from. It just, in a sense, it just seemed like we just wasted our time when we were trying to, when we asked the developer and asked them to bring things in, and then when they do it, and then all of a sudden it's just, you know, it's just rejected. I mean, it's really disheartening, you know, to, you know, what we try to do, you know, ask for things, we want to get away from apartments, want to get homes, you know. They have walked, they doing it, and then, I mean, just for them to come up and say unanimous, no, you know, I just don't.
Well, I know they don't want anything out on that Richmond Center area very much, correct? They're concerned with a lot of the congestion and stuff like that. So the question is, if that's the concern, should we even consider any projects out there now at this point? We can't get a better deal than what we got. So, I mean, should we, it doesn't seem like it makes any difference, so should we even consider that?
Well, I think what we need, as far as the planning commission, as projects come in that are proposed, and especially if they're in compliance with our city ordinances and, you know, they don't violate, for example, some zoning law or something like that, certainly have to consider them and
But this project did.
yeah, and I can't necessarily, you know, speak for what the mindset was of
No.
the city commissioners, but I think what we have to do as the planning commission and the role of the planning commission and my role as administrative official is we have people that are obviously going to want to build and develop in this community and community growth that is sustainable and environmentally sound and all those good things. You know, that's our role and your role. And then we send those things up to the city commission, and then they may have different viewpoints or be looking at different things, but they do establish the findings of fact as well. And there's some regulations there that govern some of that. So I think it's the duty of the planning commission and my job to, you know, move things up to the city commission and what they do with it from there, that's certainly their prerogative and part of the purpose they're in office and speak for the people, I think. So, I don't think we should take a stance of, well, we don't think they want anything in this area, so it's just a no. I'm not familiar with any areas that, and I've never been directed by anyone that we don't want anything here, or we don't want this type of use in this location or anything like that. And that's why we have the land code, and that's why we're working through that, and that's why the city commission approves that land code.
And it's good.
And the comprehensive plan. So when we go back to it, the comprehensive plan, the purpose of that is, and the reason why that's one of the primary functions of the planning commission, that is our guiding tool for future development in the city. So that document that's been approved, that we have, that I think we still have at least 3.5 years or so left on that before we have to redo it or revise it. That's what we need to rely on. And I made a commitment in the past, now that I think about it, and I don't have it here with me, but was to have the comprehensive plan. That's right. I'm glad you remembered that also. But that's why we talked about that. So I think if the planning commission utilizes that document and you all continue to have good discussions and try to do what you think is best for the community, and we send it on up, and then they take it from there, and I think
We
that's the
adhere to
best.
the codes. That's our basic function, is to adhere to whatever land usage codes there are, and then they can do with it.
Yeah, somewhat, and we use that comprehensive plan, and
Should we have a meeting with the commission, maybe?
you could certainly request that, and you could have
I think that would be good to talk about it, don't you
Yeah.
think?
certainly could, and I could,
So lines of communication would be good.
yeah.
and what we're thinking, what they're thinking, and so try and go from there.
You know,
And I can certainly talk to city manager
another
about that.
thing, you know, you hear about traffic all the time. And I don't know who requested commissioners, mayor, who. When has a traffic study been done here in Richmond?
A traffic study for the entire community?
Yeah, like for the bypass and all around.
I'm not familiar with one taking place outside of the state's doing some things related to Barnes Mill and Goggins Lane and some, trying to kind of, where they developed that 6-year plan, I believe was what it's called. I think it's tied into
But
that.
you know, to me, I think a traffic study is needed, really. I mean, up and down here and in the afternoons on the bypass from, it's almost from, I would almost say from, past Kroger's going east, all the way down to that
Yeah.
light down there. It's, I mean, it's, and then now it's on East Main, I say from Southern States down to the light.
Well,
Because-
Lancaster Avenue
Yeah.
was jammed,
And
et cetera.
I don't know, I just wonder who would request something about a traffic study, really.
Well,
Because
probably
it
the-
comes up all the time about traffic, and I just.
Yeah, just off the top of my head, probably the easiest way would be to have the city manager and potentially the mayor, but communicate with, the transportation department, our district, and see what their thoughts are, because the challenging part of that is, if everything was city roads,
Yeah, I know it's.
then we could do some things a little bit easier, but the issue we have is Lancaster, Main
East Main,
Street,
yeah.
all those bypass, that's all state road. That's all regulated by the state.
But you can get it on their agenda.
I'm sorry?
You can get it on their agenda. They have a,
Yeah, you could, yeah, there's a process to request things,
And we
and
need
that's,
Tate's Creek. We
Right.
need an exit there.
yeah.
Well,
So,
that's gotta be.
yeah, Tate's Creek's a state road, but Goggins is now maintained by the city. That's a city road, but Barnes Mill's state. And the reason why I brought up city manager and mayor, really, it
Yeah.
needs to come from,
Yeah,
the,
I mean,
top
but it's,
administrator.
because every zone change or something we have, the first thing comes up is traffic.
Yeah.
And it'd be easy to say, well, look, they're doing a traffic study on this, or we're proposing a traffic study on it, and it might help a little bit, but I mean, the way the area itself is developing, I just think, it needs some type of traffic study done.
Of course, our population is in flux so much too. You know, you'd have to do this almost a year-round thing because you've got Eastern and, you know, when they're here and when they're not here, everybody knows how much better traffic is when Eastern is not here.
well, it used to be a lot better.
Yeah,
But now,
it's
with all the
not-
homes and everything, it's not
Yeah.
so great even sometimes.
It's not, it's not, you know,
It's not like what it is when
Not
it's in
paradise.
session.
Like it was when I first moved here. No, it's not.
But I just think it really need some type of traffic study on it.
and one thing we do control there, and I can certainly talk to city manager about potential traffic study and see where that goes. But one thing we do have the ability to control in these developments is the connectivity. And it may not be, you know, for example, one of the projects that are coming in, we have situations where we make them stub out, where there's nothing being developed, say there, but there's a future road based on that comprehensive plan that's supposed to go through there. They stub out there. They never want to stub out there, but they stub out, and it sits there. It may sit there 10 years, it may sit there 2 years, but when the next development comes in, then that connection occurs, and then they connect around. So for example, Ash Park is a good example, and then if they develop in behind there, say that occurs at some point. But like right now, if you're in Ash Park, you can connect to Hidden Hills and come around, or you can go up through Anna Hume and then behind Save-A-Lot. Now, if there's some farmland in behind that, and if that develops, then we have a right-of-way that we made sure that we obtained that's down by the connection, excuse me, from Hidden Hills and Ash Park, that will connect back to that farm. So when that's developed, then you'll be able to go there, and then that will connect to Benson Drive, which is where the apartment development things are, and you'll be able to get to Irvin Road. So my point being, if you live in Ash Park and you want to go to Irvin Road, you don't go up to the Robert Martin and have to come around. You go back through that way and you're on Irvin Road. Or you go through, if you want to go to the bypass, and you go up the other way, so you've got connectivity. Also, the comprehensive plan in that area, for example, has, if that farm ever developed back there, they have to stub out because there's a road that's supposed to go all the way from Benson Drive, all the way around the back of it, back to 4 Mile. And we've been challenged many times, as I know some of you all have been here a while know, a lot of the developers don't want to do that stuff because like, well, that'll never be built. Well, it may not be built in my lifetime, but one day, and that's how you do it, and we don't end up with what we've got in some of the older developments where there's 8 cul-de-sacs and you drive a quarter of a mile into development and you can't even get out and it's a cul-de-sac and you have to come back. So that is something we do control that will impact traffic greatly.
Yeah, but you know,
There's no going out
I think traffic study would be good.
past Crowley. Friday, you couldn't even get out that way.
Yeah.
It was backed all the way to Main Street, all the way.
but I think what we, annexed, over 1,000 some, annexation into the city. And
Yeah, and some of that's land out, Duncan and things, but yes,
Yeah.
there has been, and I think there's gonna be continued, growth. I think people are gonna wanna continue, as long as things are moving forward economically, I don't think people will just sit back. But the other thing, without getting too far into this one, but part of the reason why it takes so long to get down the eastern bypass is because there's traffic lights about every 200 feet. All right? That's why it doesn't take so long to get down to Robert Martin, because there's literally 6 lights along that whole corridor, but they're service roads. The whole purpose of service roads is you don't have all those connections and you don't have all the traffic lights out on the bypass, because you're not really bypassing anything if you're in at a stoplight every 200 feet. So that's some of the mindset there we've talked about with the Robert Martin, and,
But what are you gonna do about when they develop it? Are you gonna stop developing on, just like on the new part? If you're gonna develop it, you're gonna have that problem.
well, if there's no additional traffic lights, for example, on the Robert Martin, and there's service roads, which are Atwood and Merchant, I believe they're actually this way, but, and so if you keep those limited traffic lights, the idea is, one, those are service roads to the businesses, but two, if I'm here and say there's no traffic light, but I wanna go I just hit the service road, go to the light and come out. The other option that was proposed by the state and did not go well for whatever reason, and I always compare it to Gatlinburg. All right, and unfortunately, I was just there. But Gatlinburg has essentially those U-turns or J-turns. Gatlinburg looks like there had to be 1 million people there when I was there. I mean, it was 3 and 4 lane road packed, but those cars are moving because there are traffic lights, but there are offset U-turns essentially that are built in and turning lanes. So you don't have traffic lights every 100 feet, you have a turn. So when you get out there, you're not expected to cross over and go left. You go right, you hit the J-turn, and then you turn and you go out, and within a matter of minutes, you're going the direction you need to be going without ever sitting at a traffic
New
light.
Jersey does that too.
Yeah,
It's
and
interesting.
that's what the state proposed and wanted to do on the Robert Martin bypass. Now, what they did do was come down, and it didn't go well, so they backed off. But for example, I cannot think of what that road is that goes to Red House. But at the intersection where there's the boat rental place up on the hill and there's the tractor, that intersection, if you'll notice now, the state came in and they offset those turning lanes, which is a safety feature that we don't have in other parts of the Robert Martin. Because, you know, when you're 2 vehicles facing each other and you've got to both try to turn and you got cars going 55 and you can't see, it's a big deal. But now there's a traffic light there, so it's not a J-turn, but they offset those. So now you can basically have a caution light and see that. You can see clearly in front of you and go. So hopefully, my humble opinion, we don't end up with a bunch of traffic lights on the Robert Martin, and I think it'll help with a lot of
Of course, it'd be
what we have out there.
nice if we had the service roads that were actually connected.
Yeah.
Like Atwood, what's in the middle? You know, having got a business on Atwood, people will stop, well, I'm looking for such and such. It's on the other end of Atwood. You gotta hit that light, or, you know, pop out on the bypass, go down the next light, hang a left and all that.
Yeah, and some of that's development related, and then there's
Yeah.
one section where there was a big ravine and they, for whatever reason, they ended up letting them develop there instead of come down and build the road around and, so that's one of the challenges of this
Poor
body
Sable
for
lot,
sure.
you know, heck, they become a street.
Well, that's because we never could get access to the road.
I know, I said it's sad, I mean, I'd be tore up.
But they will once that develops eventually,
Oh,
probably, because otherwise you can't develop. But I do think a traffic study would be nice.
Yeah, I'm not sure how, we would probably have to narrow the scope of that somehow.
And what we're gonna do, what we need to do. What you think?
Well, I think we're gonna have to probably, like, I think it would be unrealistic if we contact Transportation Department and say we want a traffic study for the city of Richmond versus we need a traffic study for maybe this corridor or this section and then this section and see.
Richmond, oh,
You see what I'm saying? Maybe break it out and then we could maybe then combine all that and extrapolate it and figure it out from there as we need to.
anything else?
When are you gonna start building the park on Goggins?
They supposed to be expecting it out.
Well, Mr. Frazier may have a good answer. I feel like he's got a good answer on that. I don't know the exact time frame. I know the planning. What I will tell you on this end that I do know, and I'm not withholding information from you, I promise, because the city manager is overseeing that project for the most part. But I do know the planning is moving forward, and there's some phasing there, and we're working with the state now regarding the connection down at on Tate's Creek, which is actually tied to the other development coming in where they line up. So I'm not sure if it'll be,
We live on Goggins, we're the ones that, the original plan for the, up from Goggins was gonna come right to our front door, so that's why. It's right there.
I think,
It affects our,
I may be wrong, but I was thinking it was slated for 2024 at some point, somewhere in there. And I thought on Goggins though that all the entrances lined up with an existing intersection.
first they did, so yeah, it's supposed to come onto Old Farm Road.
Yeah, it shouldn't be, an entrance shouldn't point at your house,
That's the
yeah.
end of my property is Old Farm Road, that's why I'm asking, that's why I'm concerned with it's my corner of my property.
Okay. I believe they line up on Goggins with the current ones. And what I can tell you from the plans that I've seen,
Yeah,
where that's up on that hill, you know, a lot of that's gonna be utilized, where the fields and things, I'm not saying will be cut down, but it's still gonna be elevated, and where that it's a large number of soccer fields and some things, and it's spread out so much. I believe it's gonna be really nice. I think it'll be it'll be much better than a big development up there.
Right.
I believe that,
Oh, so thank you for that.
yeah.
So that would be a good place for you guys to do your traffic study, is and take your,
Yeah.
because that's gonna be a big impact. We sat and counted cars one night, you know, so
Yeah.
it's pretty.
Yeah, there's quite a few people that travel
No,
on it.
we're very thankful that there are parks going in, we're not anti-park. We're glad you park. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you all.
I don't know, I just think it